Hello, Internet, and thank you for joining me. So it's that time of year where there's a new AI-generated script given life by the Hallmark Channel every 30 minutes. These things are so bad it leads me to check out some of the more classic holiday films. Your Charlie Browns, your Rankin Bass stop-motion stuff, and of course, the ever-memeable Trading Places. However, these movies are full of Christmas joy and Wall Street investment, which isn't exactly my speed. When there's wonder in the air, my cynical ass just wants to kick back and slip into a nice, comfy sweater of nihilism and anger. So what I really need is to go to a more modern classic. One that people seem to really like, but just doesn't resonate with me. And that's charming enough that I feel like a bully from an 80s movie as I go over and kick sand in their face. Yep, that one will do it. So, Elf is a 2003 movie that was kind of a precursor to the era of movies that would come out about once a year, where Will Ferrell plays a man-child, and a more respected actor tries to rein in his antics for comedic effect. That's the plot of about 17 movies of Will Ferrell's IMDb, but apparently this is the one that everyone says is an unassailable classic, and we must make merch of for the foreseeable future or until the heat death of the universe. One of the reasons I just can't get with this movie is because it's often put up alongside Miracle on 34th Street, A Christmas Story, and I feel like that compels me to, knock it down to the correct level here. And since I don't have a large following on YouTube yet, I feel like I can take a shot at this classic and not alienate too many people with my terrible opinions, instead of possibly with a larger group later on. Man, I really hope this channel takes off at some point. Alright, so let me recap this thing real quick. There's a baby Will Ferrell, and he gets accidentally brought to the North Pole, and it's decided that he'll be raised by all the elves there. However, as he grows up, he doesn't fit in, and so they wait another 30-something years for good measure, and then they decide to send him out, alone, into New York City to find his dad. Once in New York, he bounces from place to place, until he finds his dad, and his dad's a workaholic who publishes children's books, and Will Ferrell has to make him find his inner child or some such nonsense so that he can save his book company. There's a bit more to it, but that's the broad strokes here. Starting with one of my biggest gripes about this movie, once you get out of the North Pole and into the city, this narrative slams on the brakes like it's speeding in a school zone. You have all this magical stuff happening at the North Pole, and they're firing jokes at you every second, some of them landing, some of them not. Then all of a sudden, it's just Will Ferrell dicking around in an apartment store for like 10 minutes, and nothing plot relevant is happening. We start out with a very clear goal at the beginning of the film, and that's find Buddy's dad. That's accomplished by about the 30-minute mark. So then we have to come up with a new conflict to keep the plot moving. And that's where the movie really falls apart for me, since the writer's room exploded at this point in filming, and all of the singed notes were assumed to be the script, so they filmed everything and edited out nothing. It's like 4 plot lines after this. There's the one where the dad has to get a new book out or his company's going to be ruined. There's one with the dad's other son not getting enough attention and being a delinquent, I think. Zooey Deschanel exists in the movie, I guess. And then Will Ferrell, the elf, needs to fit into society or something. I don't really remember that one because nothing gets developed enough to stick in my mind. I'm going to kind of wander off here and compare this to a similar holiday classic from my own childhood, The Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen. The plot to that one is Tim Allen is Santa Claus, and this is so unbelievable to the entire world that it drives a wedge between him and his young son, as he's a divorced dad. Now, at no point in Santa Claus do we just stop the movie dead so that wild, magical bullshit can occur. Even the montage where Tim Allen is, trying to not be Santa, and a bunch of nonsense is happening. He's getting fat. Kids are coming up to him on the street. He's growing a big beard. That's all in service to Tim Allen's character. It's to establish that he is becoming Santa Claus, and he's slowly starting to accept it. Now, let's compare it to a similar scene in Elf. James Caan's character is taking Will Ferrell to work. Now, this is a setup for an obviously silly joke where, oh, isn't it wacky that he is an elf and that's weird and he acts childlike. But we don't learn anything else about either character. Both Buddy and James Caan's character are the same after this scene as they were before. You don't get any character development out of it. It's just an SNL skit that no one laughed at. It's just an excuse for Will Ferrell to be a man-child in an actual normal world. And that actually lets me segue into why I wanted to make this video and why I wanted to rewatch Elf a dozen times. Because I mentioned earlier in this script that this is the template for a lot of movies that Will Ferrell was in the mid-2000s. Mainly Anchorman, Talladega Nights, and Step Brothers. Now, those three movies in particular are ones that I deem to be very funny. I look at those as kind of the gold standard of comedy movies in the mid to early 2000s. They still hold up today. And all of these movies can be described in the same way, i.e., Will Ferrell acts like a man-child for 90 minutes, and we all watch and laugh. And I would argue that the non-Elf movies of this era are much, much better, because there is more context for all of the weird nonsense that the characters get up to. For example, in Talladega Nights, you have the mom character, Ricky Bobby's mom, which stands in as our straight man and helps ground all of the comedy in something familiar to us. But where I think the magic touch is that mom character still has all the logic that surrounds the other characters. The rest of the cast all work on the same logic, and she is much more grounded to us while still feeling like she exists and grew up in this world. That is a world where it's perfectly acceptable for Will Ferrell to act like this man-child and no one calls him out on it or it's seen as weird. These movies strike that amazing balance of absurdity and realism that the filmmakers were able to capture in them after Elf, but not for Elf, at least in my mind. I really think that this is exemplified in James Caan's character, because he is supposed to be that same straight man that we get in the mom from Talladega Nights, and he's supposed to ground all of this Will Ferrell man-child comedy. However, I don't know if it's the casting or scripting or directing, but I feel like James Caan's character doesn't run on the same logic as everyone else. It doesn't seem to be very intuitive as to who runs on what logic. For example, Mary Stenberg, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Zoe Deschanel, and the child actor, I don't know his name and I'm not looking it up, they all seem to run on a different kind of logic from James Caan's character while ostensibly living in the same world that he lives in. They seem to all come from different movies, especially, the titular character, Buddy. Like, again, to go back to the comparison between James Caan and the mom character from Talladega Nights, there's a scene in Talladega Nights where the mom character is describing why she got together with Ricky Bobby's dad, and she's talking about how handsome he was, how charming he was, blah blah blah. And it's a ridiculous story, but you get a sense that this is normal in this world. But there's no equivalent story of that in Elf. For example, James Caan's character, there is no scene where he comes off as, oh, well, he was, charming and, he swept me off my feet. Mary Steenburgen doesn't have that moment, and James Caan doesn't have that moment for her. They're literally just, playing a mom and a dad in a Christmas movie, and it feels very hollow to me. It doesn't feel like these two characters exist, at least within the same world or the same universe. Now, as kind of a last final minor point here, I don't get why there's not more magic stuff in the Elf movie. I mean, like, Will Ferrell's character knows there are several entire races of magical creatures, including a talking snowman, and it doesn't come up after like the first 15 minutes or so of the movie. It might come up at the end, I don't remember, but I feel like that was a really missed opportunity for some comedy. Like, could you imagine James Caan character interacting with a talking penguin? Just saying. Alright, that's pretty much all I got on this one. So if you have any suggestions for the next movie that I should review, go ahead and leave that down in the comments. But if you like this video, show me by leaving a like, and subscribe if you want to hear me rant about more movies. But until next time, I am Ice King Spiff. Have a good one.